It was a typical bustling day in the heart of the city, where people moved with urgency and chaos filled every corner. Among the crowd was Keza, a determined 22-year-old delivery girl riding her scooter through the noisy streets. She expertly maneuvered her way through traffic, her mind focused on her next delivery. Keza had grown used to the daily grind, battling the challenges of life while keeping a smile on her face. Her bright helmet gleamed in the sunlight, a stark contrast to the dullness of her surroundings. Little did she know, today would change her life forever. Across the city, Lucas, a 28-year-old engineer from Europe, was engrossed in his work. He was standing near a construction site, holding his meticulously drawn house designs, trying to match them with the structure in front of him. Lucas had a passion for creating beautiful and modern spaces, and this project in Africa was his most ambitious yet. However, in his focus, he ignored the workers' warnings to wear a helmet, unaware of the danger looming above him. The construction crew worked tirelessly on the upper floors, where a single misplaced brick teetered on the edge, ready to fall. Keza happened to pass by the site when her sharp eyes caught the brick plummeting toward the unsuspecting man below. Without a second thought, she abandoned her scooter and sprinted toward him. "Watch out!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the noise of the city. Lucas turned just in time to see her pushing him out of the way. The force of her push saved his life, but the brick struck her helmet with a loud thud. Keza crumpled to the ground as onlookers gasped in shock. Lucas was frozen for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest. The realization of what had just happened hit him like a wave. This stranger had risked her life for him, and now she lay unconscious at his feet. Overwhelmed with guilt and concern, he knelt beside her, calling for help. His voice trembled as he pleaded with bystanders to assist. Within minutes, an ambulance arrived, and Keza was rushed to the hospital. Lucas climbed into the ambulance with her, his mind racing with fear and gratitude. At the hospital, Lucas refused to leave her side, his own work and responsibilities forgotten. He couldn't shake the image of her brave act, and the moment she collapsed. As the doctors assured him she would recover, he sat in the waiting room, replaying the incident in his head. He didn't know this woman's name or story, but he felt an inexplicable connection to her. For Lucas, this was more than just an accident. It was the beginning of something extraordinary. The soft hum of hospital machines was the first thing Keza noticed as she slowly opened her eyes. Her head throbbed with pain, and confusion clouded her mind. She glanced around the unfamiliar room, her gaze finally landing on a man sitting by her bedside. He looked relieved to see her awake, his blue eyes filled with a mix of concern and gratitude. "You're awake," he said gently, leaning forward. "How are you feeling?" Keza blinked, trying to piece together the events that had led her here. As Lucas introduced himself, Keza's memory returned in flashes, the falling brick, her instinct to push the man out of harm's way, and the sharp impact on her helmet. She groaned, frustrated by the realization that she was in a hospital. "How long have I been here?" she asked, her voice laced with worry. "I have deliveries to make. I can't afford to be lying here." Lucas quickly reassured her that everything had been taken care of and that she had only been unconscious for a few hours. He explained how he had stayed with her, unable to leave after what she had done for him. Despite his soothing words, Keza couldn't shake her frustration. Time spent in the hospital meant lost income, and she couldn't afford even a single day off. However, as Lucas spoke, she noticed his sincerity. He thanked her repeatedly, emphasizing how her bravery had saved his life. Keza, though still guarded, felt a small sense of relief knowing he wasn't just another stranger. She allowed herself to smile faintly, her gratitude peeking through her exhaustion. Lucas, in turn, was captivated by her resilience and strength, traits that reminded him of the importance of appreciating simple acts of kindness. Over the next few hours, Lucas stayed by Keza's side, ensuring she had everything she needed. He offered to cover her medical expenses, but Keza hesitated, her pride preventing her from immediately accepting his help. Instead, she asked him about his life, curious to know more about the man whose life she had saved. Lucas shared that he was an engineer working on a major project in the city, his tone humble and unassuming. Keza found his demeanor refreshing, noting that he seemed different from the entitled personalities she often encountered. As the evening wore on, their conversation deepened. Lucas asked Keza about her life, and she spoke about her struggles, the daily grind of being a delivery girl, the challenges of living with her extended family, and the dreams she rarely shared with anyone. Lucas listened intently, his admiration for her growing with every word. For the first time in a long while, Keza felt truly seen. Though their worlds were vastly different, a bond had begun to form, sparked by the unlikeliest of circumstances. A few days after the incident, Keza was discharged from the hospital, determined to return to her routine. Despite Lucas's insistence on helping her further, she refused to lean on anyone for too long. "Thank you, but I can manage," she said firmly, though she appreciated his concern. Lucas admired her independence but felt drawn to support her in any way he could. He decided to visit her on her delivery routes, partly out of gratitude and partly out of a growing interest in her life. Keza's days were a constant hustle. She would wake up early, navigating the chaotic streets of the city on her scooter, delivering packages to various neighborhoods. Her work was grueling, and the pay barely covered her needs, but she carried on with unwavering determination. Lucas accompanied her a few times, curious to understand the world she lived in. He was struck by her kindness toward clients, even when some treated her dismissively. She had a way of handling people that combined grace with grit, and Lucas couldn't help but admire her. During one of their conversations, Keza opened up about her family situation. She revealed that after losing her parents in a car accident when she was a teenager, she had been forced to live with extended relatives. They provided her with a roof over her head, but little else. "They remind me every day that I'm a burden," she admitted quietly, her voice tinged with pain. Lucas listened intently, his heart aching for her. He couldn't fathom how someone so resilient and selfless could be treated so unfairly. Lucas began to notice just how much Keza carried on her shoulders. She didn't complain about her circumstances, but her exhaustion was evident in the way she moved and spoke. She had dreams of owning her own delivery company, hiring other young people like herself to create opportunities in the city. But those dreams seemed distant, buried under the weight of her immediate struggles. "One day," she said with a faint smile, "I'll make it happen. For now, I just have to keep going." Spending time with Keza gave Lucas a new perspective on life. His work as an engineer often kept him in a bubble of privilege, but Keza's world was raw and unfiltered. Her strength inspired him, and her struggles humbled him. They were from completely different worlds, yet Lucas felt an undeniable connection to her. He began to see her not as a project to help, but as someone who had already taught him so much about resilience, determination, and heart. As the days turned into weeks, Lucas found himself spending more time with Keza. He told himself it was out of gratitude for saving his life, but deep down, he knew it was more than that. There was something about her, the way she carried herself, the way she smiled despite her struggles, that he couldn't shake from his mind. Keza, however, was more cautious. While she appreciated Lucas's kindness, she was wary of getting too close to someone whose world seemed so different from her own. One afternoon, Lucas suggested joining her on another delivery run, and Keza, hesitant at first, reluctantly agreed. Riding through the bustling city streets, Lucas marveled at how effortlessly she navigated the chaos. At one stop, a customer complained harshly about a delayed delivery, but Keza handled it with a calm professionalism that Lucas found admirable. "How do you stay so composed?" he asked later. She laughed lightly and replied, "When life has thrown you so much, you learn not to let the little things bother you." As they spent more time together, Keza began to notice Lucas's genuine curiosity about her life. He wasn't just asking questions for the sake of it, he truly listened. She found herself opening up to him in ways she hadn't with anyone else. She told him about her dreams, her struggles, and even her fears. Lucas shared pieces of his life too, but he avoided mentioning his wealth. He had grown tired of people only valuing him for his money, and he feared that revealing the truth might change how Keza saw him. Lucas's feelings for Keza grew stronger with every passing day, but he struggled to express them. He admired her independence and didn't want to come across as someone trying to fix her life. Meanwhile, Keza began to notice the way Lucas looked at her, the way he seemed genuinely interested in her well-being. She couldn't deny that she felt a connection too, but the thought of getting involved with someone from such a different background scared her. She had worked so hard to build her life on her own, and the idea of relying on someone else felt like a betrayal of her independence. One evening, as they sat by a small food stand after a long day, the silence between them grew heavy with unspoken words. Lucas looked at her, his heart pounding, but before he could say anything, Keza spoke. "I'm not used to this," she said quietly. Having someone care so much. Her words caught Lucas off guard, and for a moment, he didn't know how to respond. Instead of confessing his feelings, he simply said, "You deserve it, Keza." And in that moment, they both felt the weight of what wasn't being said, an unspoken bond that neither was ready to fully acknowledge. Life seemed to settle into a rhythm for Keza and Lucas. She continued her delivery work and he resumed his architectural project, but their paths crossed often. Lucas found solace in Keza's company, and Keza began to enjoy the companionship of someone who seemed to genuinely care for her. However, the calm didn't last long. One fateful morning, Lucas's life in Africa collided with his past when his long-distance girlfriend unexpectedly showed up. Lucas's girlfriend, a glamorous socialite named Vanessa, had grown increasingly suspicious of his behavior. He hadn't called her in over a week, and his responses to her texts had been short and vague. Fueled by jealousy and curiosity, she decided to fly to Africa to see him for herself. She arrived unannounced at the construction site where Lucas was working, only to find him chatting and laughing with Keza, who had just delivered his lunch. Vanessa's fury erupted the moment she saw them together. "Lucas," she shouted, storming toward them. "Who is this woman? Is this why you've been ignoring me?" Her words were sharp and accusing, drawing the attention of the workers nearby. Keza, caught off guard, stepped back, unsure of how to react. Lucas tried to calm Vanessa down, but she wasn't having it. "I knew it," she yelled. "You're cheating on me with some delivery girl?" The words stung, but it was Vanessa's tone, filled with disdain, that cut Keza the deepest. Vanessa continued her tirade, hurling insults at Keza, calling her a nobody and accusing her of trying to trap Lucas for his money. Keza's face burned with humiliation, but she refused to retaliate. Instead, she looked at Lucas, her eyes demanding an explanation. Lucas stepped forward, his voice firm. "Vanessa, stop this right now. Keza has done nothing wrong, and you have no right to treat her this way." Vanessa was stunned by Lucas's defense of Keza, but her shock quickly turned to anger. "So you're choosing her over me?" she spat. Lucas didn't flinch. "Yes," he said simply. "I am." His words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Vanessa's face twisted with disbelief before she turned on her heel and stormed off. The workers murmured among themselves, and Lucas turned to Keza, his expression filled with regret. Keza, however, was furious. "You didn't tell me you had a girlfriend," she said, her voice trembling. "And now I'm in the middle of this mess." Lucas tried to explain, telling her that his relationship with Vanessa had been falling apart long before he met Keza. But Keza wasn't ready to hear it. "I need some time," she said, walking away. Lucas watched her go, his heart heavy with the realization that he might have lost her trust. Keza didn't sleep that night. Vanessa's words echoed in her mind, and the revelation that Lucas had a girlfriend left her feeling angry and betrayed. She couldn't understand why he hadn't told her the truth earlier, especially after everything they had shared. Her instincts told her to push him away, to protect herself from further pain, but her heart reminded her of the Lucas she had come to know, the kind, sincere man who had stayed by her side when she needed someone most. The next day, Lucas called her repeatedly, but she ignored every call. When he showed up at her usual delivery spot, she reluctantly agreed to talk to him. They sat at a quiet cafe, and Lucas wasted no time addressing the elephant in the room. "Keza, I owe you an apology," he began. "I should have told you about Vanessa, but I didn't because I didn't want to scare you away." Keza folded her arms, her expression unreadable. "You didn't think I'd find out eventually?" she asked, her tone cold. Lucas explained that his relationship with Vanessa had been rocky for months. "We've been drifting apart for a long time," he said. "When I came to Africa, I thought the distance would give us clarity, but meeting you changed everything for me." Keza's eyes narrowed. And what am I supposed to do with that information? You lied to me, Lucas. How can I trust you now? Her voice wavered, betraying the hurt she felt. Lucas sighed, running a hand through his hair. There's more I need to tell you, he admitted. I've been hiding something else. Keza raised an eyebrow, her patience wearing thin. What now? She asked. Lucas hesitated before continuing, his voice soft. I'm a billionaire. I didn't tell you because I've had too many people care about my money instead of me. I didn't want you to think I was offering you charity. Keza's reaction was immediate. Her chair scraped against the floor as she stood up, her emotions bubbling to the surface. Charity? She repeated, her voice louder than she intended. So you think I'd just take your money and forget everything I've worked for? Lucas stood as well, his expression pained. No, Keza, that's not what I meant. I respect your independence, I've always admired it, but I wanted you to know the truth, even if it makes you hate me. Keza didn't know how to respond. Part of her wanted to walk away and never look back, but another part, the part that remembered his kindness, his genuine concern, told her to stay. I don't hate you, she finally said, her voice quieter now, but I need time to figure out what all of this means. Lucas nodded, his relief evident. Take all the time you need, he said. I'll wait for you, Keza, no matter how long it takes. Days turned into weeks, and the silence between Keza and Lucas lingered. Keza spent the time trying to make sense of her emotions. She couldn't deny the connection she felt with Lucas, but the revelations about his wealth and his past relationship had shaken her trust. Meanwhile, Lucas respected her need for space, though he desperately wanted to see her again. Determined to prove his sincerity, he decided to take a bold step, inviting Keza to meet his parents. One afternoon, Lucas showed up at Keza's delivery spot, catching her by surprise. She was wary, but agreed to hear him out. My parents are visiting Africa, Lucas said, his voice calm but hopeful. They're here to see wildlife and spend time with me. I want you to meet them. Keza blinked, unsure of how to respond. Meeting his parents felt like a monumental step, especially given the turmoil between them. Why? She asked cautiously. Why would you want me to meet them? Lucas looked at her earnestly. Because I care about you, Keza, and I want them to meet the woman who changed my life. Keza hesitated, but something in Lucas's tone made her agree. A few days later, they drove to a luxurious safari lodge where Lucas's parents were staying. Keza couldn't help but feel out of place as they entered the grand property, her modest clothes contrasting sharply with the opulence around her. Lucas noticed her discomfort and leaned closer. You belong here, Keza, he said softly, his reassurance easing some of her nerves. When they reached the outdoor terrace, Lucas's parents stood waiting, their faces lighting up as they saw their son. Mom, Dad, this is Keza, Lucas said, introducing her with pride. His mother, a graceful woman with kind eyes, stepped forward first. It's so nice to meet you, Keza, she said warmly, extending a hand. Lucas has told us so much about you. Keza shook her hand, surprised by the genuine warmth in her tone. His father, a tall man with a quiet demeanor, nodded in approval. Welcome, he said simply. Keza smiled nervously, still unsure of how to navigate the situation, but their kindness began to put her at ease. As the evening unfolded, Keza found herself opening up. Lucas's parents asked her about her life, her work, and her dreams, and they listened with genuine interest. By the time dinner ended, Keza felt more comfortable, even laughing at a few of Lucas's childhood stories. Lucas watched her with quiet admiration, grateful that she had agreed to come. For the first time since their falling out, he saw a glimmer of hope that they could move forward together. When Lucas drove Keza home that night, she turned to him and said, Your parents are wonderful. Thank you for letting me meet them. Lucas smiled, his heart swelling with relief. Thank you for giving me the chance to show you how serious I am about us, he replied. Keza didn't respond right away, but as they said their goodbyes, she realized she was beginning to trust him again. The walls she had built around her heart were slowly starting to come down. The invitation to meet Lucas's parents had been a turning point for Keza. For the first time, she saw that Lucas was truly serious about her. The sincerity in his actions slowly began to dissolve her doubts. Despite the differences in their worlds, she started to believe that Lucas's feelings for her went beyond gratitude or infatuation. A few days after the visit, Lucas invited Keza to join him for dinner at a quiet spot outside the bustling city, a place where they could finally be alone, without interruptions. The restaurant was nestled on the edge of a hill, offering a breathtaking view of the city lights below. Keza was stunned by its beauty, but she couldn't shake her hesitation. "You didn't have to bring me somewhere this fancy," she said softly as they were seated. Lucas smiled warmly. "You deserve nice things, Keza. Tonight isn't about impressing you. It's about spending time with you." His words put her at ease, and for the first time in weeks, Keza allowed herself to relax and enjoy the moment. As the evening went on, their conversation flowed naturally. Lucas shared stories about his childhood, his love for designing houses, and the challenges he faced balancing his work with his personal life. Keza, in turn, spoke about her parents, her dreams of running her own business, and the resilience she'd built over the years. Their laughter and shared stories created a bubble of warmth, isolating them from the world outside. Lucas couldn't take his eyes off her, captivated by her strength and beauty. After dinner, Lucas suggested they take a walk under the stars. The air was cool, and the sky above them was clear and filled with constellations. As they walked along the hillside path, their conversation grew quieter, their silences comfortable and filled with unspoken emotions. Lucas finally stopped and turned to Keza, his expression serious yet tender. "Keza," he said softly, "I've fallen in love with you, not because you saved my life, but because you've shown me what it means to truly live." Keza's breath caught in her throat. She had been guarding her heart for so long that she wasn't sure how to respond. But as she looked into Lucas's eyes, she realized she felt the same way. "I've been trying to fight how I feel about you," she admitted. "But I can't deny it anymore. I care about you, Lucas." Her words broke the final barrier between them. Lucas closed the space between them, and they shared a kiss that was tender and full of promise. A moment that felt like the start of something extraordinary. That night, Lucas and Keza stayed together, their connection deepening in ways they hadn't anticipated. It was a night of passion, but it was also a night of vulnerability and trust. They shared not only their bodies, but their hearts, laying bare their fears and hopes for the future. For the first time, Keza felt safe enough to let someone in completely. As they held each other under the quiet stillness of the night, neither of them could have predicted the challenges that lay ahead. But in that moment, they were simply two people in love, ready to face whatever came next together. The days following their night together felt like a dream for Keza. For the first time in years, she felt genuinely happy. Lucas was attentive and kind, and their connection had deepened in ways she never thought possible. However, the happiness was short-lived as reality came crashing down around her. One morning, Keza woke up feeling nauseous and lightheaded. At first, she dismissed it as exhaustion from her delivery work, but the symptoms persisted. A visit to a nearby clinic confirmed her suspicions. She was pregnant. Keza sat in the clinic, clutching the test results with trembling hands. Her mind raced with questions. How would Lucas react? What would her family say? She had no idea how to navigate the situation, and the weight of it felt overwhelming. That evening, she returned to the small house where she lived with her extended family. She decided to wait a few days before telling Lucas, hoping to gather her thoughts first. However, fate had other plans. Keza's aunt, who had always been critical of her, noticed the subtle changes in her demeanor. Her frequent nausea and quiet mood raised suspicions, and it wasn't long before her secret was discovered. Confronting Keza in front of the entire household, her aunt demanded to know the truth. "You've brought shame to this family," she yelled when Keza hesitantly admitted her pregnancy. "You're no better than the women who sell themselves on the streets." The words stung, and Keza felt her world crumbling as her family turned against her. Her uncle, the head of the household, was no more forgiving. He accused her of being reckless and irresponsible, refusing to listen when she tried to explain her situation. "You have no place in this house," he declared, his tone final. "We won't support your mistakes." Keza begged them to reconsider, but their decision was made. Within hours, she was forced to pack her belongings and leave the only home she had known since her parents' death. Homeless and heartbroken, Keza wandered the streets, unsure of where to go. That night, Keza found refuge at a women's shelter in the city. The small, crowded space was far from comfortable, but it was safe. She sat on a worn-out mattress, her arms wrapped around her knees, trying to process everything that had happened. Her thoughts turned to Lucas, but she hesitated to call him. She didn't want to seem weak or dependent, and part of her feared how he might react to the news of her pregnancy. As tears streamed down her face, Keza made a silent promise to herself and her unborn child. No matter what, she would find a way to survive. Meanwhile, Lucas was unaware of the storm unfolding in Keza's life. He had been busy finalizing his project, preparing for his return to Europe. He had planned to spend his remaining days in Africa with Keza, but her sudden distance worried him. He tried calling her, but she didn't answer. Concerned, he decided to find her. What he didn't know was that Keza's silence wasn't just about distance. It was about protecting herself and the child she now carried. Lucas knew something was wrong. Keza's absence from their usual meeting places and her silence on the phone left him restless and worried. He began asking around, visiting the neighborhoods she frequented for deliveries, but no one had seen her. Determined to find her, Lucas widened his search. His project was complete, and his return to Europe was just days away, but he couldn't leave without making sure Keza was okay. After days of searching, Lucas finally found her at a women's shelter. The sight of her sitting on a small mattress, her shoulders hunched and eyes red from crying, broke his heart. She looked up in shock as he approached, unsure how to feel. "Keza," he said softly, sitting beside her. "I've been looking for you everywhere. Why didn't you tell me what was going on?" Keza hesitated, her emotions a mixture of relief and shame. "I didn't want to burden you," she whispered. "You've already done so much." Lucas took her hands in his voice firm but gentle. "You could never be a burden, Keza. I care about you, and I want to be here for you. Whatever you're going through, we'll face it together." His words brought tears to her eyes, and she finally opened up about everything: her pregnancy, her family's betrayal, and her struggles to find stability. Lucas listened intently, his concern deepening with every word. "You don't have to go through this alone," he said. "I want to be here for you and our child." Keza was overwhelmed by his support, but her fears lingered. "Lucas, I don't want you to feel obligated," she said. "I can't accept help just because of the baby." Lucas shook his head. "This isn't about obligation. I love you, Keza. I've loved you from the moment you saved my life. I want us to be a family." His confession caught her off guard, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that they could build a future together. Lucas didn't waste any time. He made arrangements to move Keza out of the shelter and into a comfortable apartment he had rented for her. Keza hesitated at first, worried about losing her independence, but Lucas assured her that this was a partnership, not a handout. "You're the strongest person I've ever met," he told her. "You've inspired me in ways you'll never know. Let me share this journey with you." Slowly, Keza began to trust his intentions, and they started to rebuild their lives together. As the weeks passed, Keza began to regain her confidence. Lucas accompanied her to her prenatal appointments, and they started making plans for their child. Despite the challenges they had faced, their bond grew stronger. For the first time in a long while, Keza felt secure and loved. Lucas, in turn, found a new sense of purpose and fulfillment in their relationship. Together, they were ready to face whatever the future held. The weeks following their reunion marked the beginning of a new chapter for Keza and Lucas. With Lucas's unwavering support, Keza finally felt the weight of her struggles beginning to lift. She moved into the cozy apartment Lucas had rented for her, but true to her nature, she insisted on contributing. "I need to keep working," she told Lucas. "I don't want to lose myself or my independence." Lucas respected her determination, encouraging her to pursue her goals while reassuring her that he was by her side. Keza returned to her delivery job, but this time with a renewed sense of purpose. Lucas admired her resilience and often joined her on her routes, helping her strategize ways to streamline her work. Together, they discussed her dream of starting her own delivery business. Lucas offered to invest in her idea, but Keza hesitated. "I don't want people to think I'm just riding on your wealth," she said. Lucas smiled and replied, "Then let's make it a partnership. You lead, and I'll support you where I can." As Keza's pregnancy progressed, Lucas became more involved, attending every appointment and learning as much as he could about parenthood. He even began designing a nursery for their child, sketching out plans for a space that was both beautiful and practical. "Our baby deserves the best," he told Keza one evening as he showed her his drawings. Keza, touched by his dedication, couldn't help but smile. "You're going to be an amazing father," she said softly, and Lucas felt a swell of pride and joy. Their relationship wasn't without challenges. Society's judgment of their interracial and seemingly mismatched relationship loomed over them. People whispered about Keza's humble background and accused her of using Lucas for his money. But Keza and Lucas chose to rise above the criticism. "We know the truth," Lucas often reminded her. "That's all that matters." Keza drew strength from his confidence, refusing to let the negativity define their journey. As their due date approached, Keza and Lucas focused on building a strong foundation for their family. Keza began working on her business plan, and Lucas connected her with professionals who could guide her. Together, they created a vision for her company, a delivery service that would empower other young people in the city. Meanwhile, Lucas's parents, who had grown fond of Keza, offered their full support, further solidifying the couple's resolve. In their own ways, both Keza and Lucas had proven that love, resilience, and teamwork could overcome even the toughest of circumstances. The day finally arrived when Keza and Lucas welcomed their son into the world. In a quiet hospital room, filled with the soft cries of their newborn, their journey came full circle. Keza held their baby close, tears streaming down her face as she looked at Lucas, who sat beside her, overwhelmed with emotion. "He's perfect," Lucas whispered, his voice choked with happiness. Keza smiled through her tears, feeling a love that she had never known before, one that was equal parts for her son and the man who had stood by her through it all. The weeks after the birth were a mix of exhaustion and joy, as Keza and Lucas adjusted to their new roles as parents. Lucas, despite his demanding career, was hands-on, waking up in the middle of the night to soothe the baby and ensuring Keza had time to rest. Keza, in turn, found herself leaning into the support system they had built together. She began to see their partnership not as a compromise of her independence, but as a testament to what they could accomplish as a team. As their son grew, so did Keza's delivery business. With Lucas's guidance and her determination, she launched her company, starting with just a few scooters and a small team. The business quickly gained traction, providing jobs for young people in the city who, like her, had struggled to find opportunities. Keza's story of perseverance and ambition inspired others, and she became a role model for many in her community. Lucas often watched her in awe, proud of how far she had come and grateful to be a part of her journey. Their life wasn't without challenges. The societal judgments that had once plagued them still lingered in whispers, but they had learned to drown out the noise. Lucas's parents became regular visitors, doting on their grandson and supporting Keza in her endeavors. Keza's extended family, who had cast her out, slowly began to see the strength and success she had built. Though their relationship remained strained, Keza found peace in forgiving them, knowing that holding on to bitterness would only weigh her down. As the years passed, Keza and Lucas reflected on their journey, finding solace in the lessons they had learned. Their story became one of hope, resilience, and the power of love to overcome even the greatest obstacles. Keza often reminded Lucas of the day they met, teasing him about his recklessness at the construction site. "If I hadn't saved you, none of this would have happened," she joked. Lucas would laugh and reply, "And if I hadn't fallen for you, I'd still be stuck in a world that meant nothing." The story ends with the family sitting together in their cozy home, their son playing on the floor while Keza and Lucas sip tea. They talk about the future. Keza's plans to expand her business, Lucas's dreams of designing more eco-friendly homes, and the life they want to build for their child. Their journey, though filled with challenges, had taught them that love is not just about grand gestures, but about standing by each other through life's hardest moments. As they looked out at the setting sun, they knew they had found something rare and beautiful, a love that was built on trust, respect, and unwavering commitment.